do anything much. And so we at conference, that was decided on, and that decision moved to 3 years. So this is our second time around, our second trimester of triennial, sorry, 3 years.
Can you tell our listeners, as a General Secretary, what is your specific role within the union?
As General Secretary within the Union and by the Constitution, the General Secretary is responsible for membership. The General Secretary is responsible for all communications. The General Secretary is responsible for summoning meetings, documenting meetings, ensuring that meetings are correct, and the General Secretary responds to and writes on behalf of the Guyana Teachers Union.
Good, very good. Now, you're also a member of parliament for the APNU/PNC/AFC coalition government. Now, you decide to enter politics. How long, I don't know. But what are some of the reasons that led you to become a politician?
Well, let me say to you, first of um, all of us are political, every single one of us, and there's no need to run and duck your head in the sand. All of us are politicians. As a matter of fact, many of us do vote, and the mere fact that you vote, it says that you're part and parcel of the politics. I need to say too that in our very homes we have politics playing out in our very homes, with our children, the way we allow them to operate, not to operate, the kinds of rules we put in our homes. So all of that in its own way is another sense of politics. But getting into politics, I never thought that I'd be a politician. That kind of politics, I always felt that the trade union politics was good enough for me. But then over the years, we've been arguing around the labor table, that labor must be a part of what is happening in our national politics. We cannot continue to be speaking outside of the room or not being seated at the table. And so when the opportunity came around, um, after having discussions with quite a lot of my colleagues around the trade union movement, both locally and within the Caribbean and further afield, I was so advised, well, look, go for it. Labor is going to be at the table. We're not only going to be talking now from the outside, but we'll be at the table. And that's when I made a decision to enter international politics.
Are you being paid by as a teacher and also as an MP?
Yes, of course. I am employed by the Ministry of Education as a head teacher, and I'm also a parliamentarian. And as a parliamentarian, you receive a salary too.
Well, according to Vice President Jagdeo, number one, that's a conflict of interest, and number two, that's double dipping. What do
Um,
you have to say?
well, nobody really takes Barra Jagdeo seriously because he has outlived his usefulness. Let me say that. Barra Jagdeo speaks from. You don't really know which side of his mouth he's speaking from many times because he's always contradicting his own self. We have seated in Parliament. Um, we have Dr. Henry, who sits on the government side. She's a medical doctor. She's receiving her salary as a doctor, and she's also a member of parliament. We have there Dr. Kisoon, who is the third party. Is she the third party? The joiner party representative. She is a medical doctor. She receives her salary as a doctor, and she receives her salary as a parliamentarian. And we have so many others who are sitting in the government benches, and Barra Jagdeo has absolutely no issue with that. But Barra Jagdeo's issue is about Coretta McDonald. Let me say further, I have my colleague, my trade union colleague, C. Paul Narayan, who is sitting in parliament, receiving parliamentary salary, and he is also president of GAU. But Jagdeo sees nothing wrong with that. And Coretta McDonald, let me say this, it's not the only parliamentarian that GTU would have had. We had Genevieve Allen, who served as first vice president for the Guyana Teachers Union, and she was also a member of parliament. We had Colin Bino, who served as the regional vice president Berbice, and he also served at the same time as a member of parliament. We had there John Adams, who was at his school as a head of department. He served as a parliamentarian. We still have my colleague German Figueroa, who was a teacher and still serving as a member of parliament. And he has been in parliament, I think, the longest out of the set that I would have mentioned. And we heard no issues about the names that I've called, or those persons that I've called listed there just now. But Barrow Jagvir, he has a problem with himself. He has a problem with any woman who's strong. And when he can't get to you, then he goes all over the place, spilling a lot of foolishness around the place. What I want to say tonight is that the issue of Coretta McDonald being an MP and being a teacher, it has nothing contradictory about it, nothing there. As a matter of fact, the Guyana Teachers Union's constitution is absolutely clear on that. As a matter of fact, the constitution of this country allows every single citizen the right of association. And that constitution supersedes all other constitutions. So when Barrow Jagvir wants to run around and make noise out of empty vessels or empty barrels that he has there, it's just another distraction, another way of sidestepping the real issues and putting into place or putting into picture somebody who he thinks the general public out there will fall for his nonsense. But people don't buy the kind of nonsense that he shares anymore.
Okay, good. Now, the teachers were on strike for 75 days, and I think it was 2 strikes that were called. Now, the GTU has finally signed the contract, which gives teachers a 10% in 2024, 8% in 2025, and 9% in 2026. What's wrong with that?
Well, first of all, let me say the GTU was out there for our teachers who are members of the GTU. We were out there for 75 days. In the first instance, that could have been avoided. This was the very government when they were in opposition. They continued to speak about collective bargaining and the return of collective bargaining. And when they get into office, they will return collective bargaining. But as soon as they got into office, we saw a different side of the beast. This was the very government who, in 2016, lambasted the coalition government about the 10% that they offered to workers across this country. This was the very government that said they were going to offer public servants 50% increase when they got into office. But this very same government now, well, that was the opposition then, but this very government at this time, how many years after? 2016, and this is 24, 8 years after, this very government, with all that has been happening, rising cost of living and everything else, this is the very people, the set of people who are now prepared and who have offered teachers 10%. 10%, when you look at 10%, when you would have taken out all the taxes, you recognize that teachers are barely left with a meager 5.5%. And if you were to add 5.5% to their salaries, you would see many of our teachers, especially the teachers who fall between the group TS scale 1 to 4 or 3. That's where the majority of our teachers are. And let me say that we have 4,700 and something teachers in this country. I think it's 746 teachers in this country. The majority of our teachers, about 9,000 plus of those teachers, fall within that category. And within that category, their salaries range from $90,000 to $140,000, $145,000, $160,000. That's where the base of our membership fall. And if you were to look at teachers who are renting houses to call their homes, transportation, they have to eat, they have to wear. Then you would understand that 5.5% or 10% will not do anything for the teachers within that catchment. If you look at our proposal, in our proposal, we had there 39.5% for the teachers who will fall within the scales, TS scale 1 to 3. We asked for 39.5%. And there was a specific reason for asking for that, for those teachers. And like I said earlier, it is because of where their salaries range. We were hoping that we would, even if we did not get 39.5% and we had gotten 20% for them, at least that would have been able to bring them up somewhere closer to what we can term average salary. The teachers within the TS scale 4 to 19, we were asking for 35% for them. So in the first instance, we asked for 39.5% in 2024 for those teachers in the TS scale 1 to 3. And then we said 30% in 2025 and 2026. But for the teachers in the TS scale, within TS scale 4 to 19, we said 35% and the 30% for the years 2025 and 2026. And like I said, there was a reason for that. Lo and behold, we saw the very caring, quote unquote, government coming out with 8%. When that was rejected, they came with 9%. When that was rejected, they came with 10%. The 10% was also rejected. I'm not sure what caused this surprised swing, because the very week when the president decided, after there was this big clamor that we should not accept 10%, and teachers were saying 10%, I was out in the streets for 75 days. Why am I accepting 10%? Why did we propose 35 and 39% if we knew that we were going to ask for 10%? That doesn't make sense. If we know that we were going to accept 10%, it doesn't make sense. And so there was this big noise amongst our members, and everything was put on hold. We were told, let's go out and consult with our teachers. This swing came. I don't know what caused the president to do what he did there, and I would have been happy if he was here sitting with me so that we can talk about it, but I guess he has other reasons for not being here. But I must say to you that this agreement, this contract that was signed is a very lopsided contract, because from the 14,746 teachers that we have in this country, if we were to go this agreement step by step, then you would recognize duty-free concessions that you hear Barra Jagvio talk all the time about. Oh, and the teachers are going to receive duty-free concessions. You know how many teachers out of that number, out of that set will receive duty-free? 150 teachers. Out of that 14,000 plus, 150, will receive duty-free concessions. And it's not only 150 head teachers, but it's 4 categories of teachers. Head teachers, deputy head teachers, senior masters and mistresses, and the heads of departments. So when you divide 150 by 4, then you recognize how many teachers are going to be receiving that duty-free concession. And if you do the math, you're going to also recognize that we have hundreds of head teachers, hundreds of deputy head teachers, the same thing for heads of departments and senior masters, mistresses. And so again, this is lopsided. We proposed 300. During the previous agreements, we were receiving 100 duty-free. We proposed 300 this time around. What we took into effect is the fact that we had to give up this 2019-2023 document that the government never looked at. We had to throw this aside because the government stated then that they were not prepared to go back to all of those years. They were prepared to move forward from 2024. Having said that, and taking lots and lots of other conditions into consideration, we said, okay, rather than prolonging this, let's do a 2024 proposal. And so we were hoping that having set aside the 2019-2023 document, that this government would have been a little more lenient and considerate and caring for teachers. But we've seen what exactly has played out. And so we have there the lopsided agreement that was signed. I don't know if some mala was thrown over somebody's head. Somebody was taken to lunch. Somebody was taken to dinner. Somebody received a brown paper bag, which is the go now. I don't know what happened, but it's sad that an agreement was signed, much to the annoyance of the teachers across this country. I can tell you too that there are several issues in that proposal that were not ironed out. And so it took all by surprise. As a matter of fact, I was taken by surprise because I turned up there on that morning of the 9th for us to have a continuation of our meetings from where we left off the week before. Not a word was said to us by the president that, look, colleagues, we are here this morning and we are going to be signing an agreement, regardless of the hiccups that we have, regardless of the issues that were not conformed on, we are going to sign an agreement. Nothing was said until we were in the midst of the meeting, ironing out the minutes of the meeting. And then we heard we are going to print the document because we're going to print 4 copies as we prepare to sign. And persons were wondering, sign what? Sign what? And then we learned that Dr. Light was prepared to sign that agreement. I can tell you there was chaos in that room. And I want to say tonight that I, as General Secretary, I, as Coretta McDonald, felt very, very disappointed with the outcome of this entire process. I felt deceived and disrespected because here is it, you have the president of Guyana, not the Guyana, sorry, the president of the GTU, who knew fully well that he was going to get involved in skullduggery business in terms of signing that agreement, and said nothing to his, well, not to all of his colleagues, because I figure some of his colleagues knew what was going to happen. But that was very dishonest and deceptive, the actions of the president of the Guyana Teachers Union on that day. I guess we can go more into it as we continue the conversation.
Yeah, we'll get there. We'll get back to that. Now, you spoke about a livable wage for teachers. What is your idea of a livable wage?
Well, a livable wage is one, and you can't put a figure to that unless you look at everything else that would be intertwined into that livable wage. But a livable wage for teachers should be a wage that would have teachers living in comfort, not from paycheck to paycheck. A wage that would ensure at the end of the month you still have a few dollars in your hand, not halfway the month your monies are finished, your salary is finished, and then you don't know where your next meal is coming from tomorrow. And so when we talk about a livable wage, we're talking about a salary here that would afford a teacher to pay his or her rent, would afford a teacher to pay his or her transportation, that would afford a teacher to live. And we're not talking here about a lavish lifestyle. We're talking here about a modest lifestyle where you can maybe take your children out on a Sunday afternoon for a light stroll, or you can take your family to dinner. But many teachers can't afford to do that. When we look at what is happening to our colleagues in Upper Mars, in Region 8, in Region 9, in Upper Mars alone, I can tell you, one bottle of gas is, and this is cooking gas, $16,000. One sack of rice that we purchase out here on the coast for, I think it's $1,900 or maybe $2,300, is $8,000 there. 1 pound of chicken is $1,500. So if you do the math, you would understand a teacher whose salary is 98,000 or 110,000 or 120,000 if you do the math and you put that into a family of 3, then you understand how teachers are living from paycheck to paycheck. And as some teachers are saying, you get paid today, you broke tomorrow.
Now, let's go back to the contract. Isn't a normal practice that before a contract is being signed by the executives, that it should have passed through, send it to the teachers across the country and let them ratify it and see what percentage will vote for and what against?
Well, yes, that has always been the practice. As a matter of fact, all during this period, we were in contact with our teachers. All during the period until there was a sudden halt where the president felt that he should not be engaging the teachers any longer. And mind you, I guess the president knew exactly why he did not want to engage the teachers. Now, we have a general council that is made up of 52 persons. Now, 40 of those come from the branches. Those persons, those general council rep who are coming from their branches, when they come to general council meetings, they normally come to general council meeting with a mandate from their teachers. Now, if we were going to agree on this 10%, it meant then, or it means that we were supposed to have gone out there informing our general council reps, having them inform the teachers in their branches that, look, the government is offering 10%, and the union, the executive is inclined to accepting this 10%. What do you think about that? It's clear that our teachers would have said then, no way. Now, one of the things I need to say here is that our teachers, the process, as a matter of fact, the process was just in its initial stage. We did not reach the stage where there was a back and forth and a back and forth, and then we came to a stalemate. We did not reach there. And even if we had met that path or that bridge, then there were 2 other bridges that we could have crossed where we could have gone to conciliation and then move to arbitration if conciliation was not granted. We could have gone to arbitration. And you and I know that you can never go into arbitration and end up with less. So if the government was offering 10% and we had gone to arbitration, we could never have ended up with less than 10%. But all this skullduggery business that happened in between that have caused this agreement to be signed. And I must highlight that we have never had an agreement being signed by the president and the second vice president of the Ghana Teachers Union. Never. If the general secretary is not present, then there's a deputy general secretary who signs along with the president. More than that, the Ghana Constitution, the Ghana Teachers Union Constitution, there are 3 signing officers: the president, the first vice president, and the general secretary. Any budget, any spending of monies, it passes through either the general secretary, the first vice president, or the president. Fortunately and unfortunately, on this occasion, even though the second vice president was there, even though the first vice president was there, the general secretary was there, the deputy general secretary was there, the document was printed with the name of the second vice president. So that in itself is saying to you that big time skullduggery passed, big time whatever payoff or whatever it was, big time compromise was made to the detriment of our teachers. And that is what we should not condone. If you're a union leader, then you must stand for your members. That's why they voted you. That's why they nominated you. You should not at any time, quote unquote, throw your members under the bus because you have decided to be selfish. And what we saw there was selfishness playing out by the president of the Ghana Teachers Union.
Well, let me ask you this question, though. If you're telling me that the Constitution states who are the signatures to any type of contract, any type of whatever the union has to sign off on, and you did not sign, can the president and the first vice president sign alone and make that contract valid or that document valid?
Well, if we're going to talk constitution, then we should have now returned to our general council to say, well, because one person cannot make that decision for the union. It has to be a consensus. So if the general secretary had refused, let's say the general secretary had refused to sign the document, then we should have been there now saying, okay, we will have to return to our general council or call an emergency executive council meeting and have this matter quickly ratified before we pronounce and have the document signed. But that's another story all by itself.
No, but my question to you, is the document valid based on the stipulations in the Constitution that 3 people must sign it? The president, 4th vice president, and the general secretary. But in this case, you did not sign. So is the document
valid? Because of the breaches that would have occurred, that document there is not valid.
So what the union intends to do?
Well, membership has the opportunity, according to the Constitution, to do several things, and I think membership will speak.
Can you name some of those things?
Well, the Constitution says that the members could request an emergency, a special conference. That's one. The Constitution spoke to bringing the union into disrepute. The Constitution also spoke about disciplining of officers and general council members. So there are several options that general council members and the wider membership can take to deal with this issue.
Okay. So the matter still rests with the teachers as to what action should be taken in the future. How long you intend to before this action is taken?
Well, you see, it's not about Coretta McDonald, it's about the teachers out there. And so the teachers have to do what they have to do. I should say, too, that many of our branches have written to the General Secretary requesting a special conference to deal with this whole matter of the signing of this agreement. The Constitution speaks to 25% of the membership. And so when that would have been had, I guess we'll have to do as is stipulated in the Constitution.
Okay. Now, last December, the government gave an increase across the board to all public servants. Did teachers receive an increase then? And how much did they receive?
Well, last December, the teachers received, what was it, 6.5? I think it was 6.5. I think it was 6.5.
So the 6.5 plus the 10%, now that's 16.5%.
Well, you see, last year we were talking about 2023. This document speaks to 2024, 2026.
Okay, I agree. I got you. Now, what percentage you think the teachers should have received at the minimum?
If I were to be honest with you, I would tell you the teachers deserve 35%. If I were to be honest with you. You see, this is not back in the years when we hadn't the resources. We have the resources. If you notice, we're constructing roads, we're doing schools, we're doing all kinds of things. We have cash grants sharing here, there, and everywhere. And let me say to you that in this agreement, in our talks during the negotiations period, the Guyana Teachers Union highlighted the fact that, several sectors of workers have been granted cash grants. Teachers were absent from that. There was no mention of teachers. Several other sectors of workers have been given this and had their salaries debunched and all of that. It never happened for teachers. In our proposal, we highlighted the health risk allowance of $10,000. That was thrown right off the table. And I'm saying, teachers, everyday teachers are at risk. And I'm sure you have been following the media and the news all the time, where teachers have been robbed in schools. Teachers have been assaulted by parents, by their students, by their pupils. And so when we ask for a risk allowance of $10,000, we thought that, the government would have been happy to have that given to teachers. That was thrown off the table. We thought there again to ask for an allowance for teachers to be given. I think that allowance was $5,000 or something like that, for teachers to be given credit to put in their cell phones, because teachers have to use their cell phones ever so often to call parents, something happening, to call the Department of Education, because on many occasions the school telephones are not working, which we call the landline phones. And so we ask that teachers be given that allowance to put credit in their cell phones. That was denied. And there are several other issues that we spoke to in our proposal that were denied by this government. The welfare matters for teachers, where we said that, the senior teachers, we were asking that all aspects of promotions be returned to the Teaching Service Commission. That was thrown off the table. And I mean, we have the housing revolving project that we signed since 2006. It never gave birth. So many other strategies were tried to pull that into place. We never got birth to that. And that too is unresolved, but an agreement was signed. We also have there the RAI and the station allowance and the hardline allowance for teachers who are living in the hinterland, where cost of living is extremely high. The government did not find favor with that. Simple as marking SBAs, where the union proposed $1,500 for marking SBAs. And for those of us who understand marking of SBAs, if you're doing the sciences, one subject, you have to do 30 labs per child. And so when you ask for those sums, the $1,500 was taken right down to $500. I mean, $500 today in Guyana, what really can you buy with $500? In Upper Mass, that can buy you only quarter pound of chicken. And so the government of the day did not come over as being sympathetic towards our teachers. Apparently, our teachers are not valued. Their services and their contributions are not valued in this country. The politicians, this government doesn't value teachers. But you know what? When our children excel at their examinations, what do you see? You see the minister jumping all around and they're making a whole lot of fuss about it, but you don't ever see a teacher being given a bouquet to say, thank you, miss, for what you would have done for our children. Thank you, miss, for working with our children beyond all that has been happening. Our teachers worked during COVID. Many of them died in the line of duty. But you know what? Yet our teachers are not being recognized by the people who are supposed to recognize them for the services that they give to this country. But it's a sad state of affairs.
You said that the teachers in Guyana ranked last in terms of payment among its CARICOM neighbors. How so?
Yes, if you check the stats, you're going to see it's Guyana and Haiti, the lowest paid in the Caribbean. And that's why many of our teachers are leaving. When we check the reopening of schools just last Monday, you've seen that in several schools, 2 and 3 teachers are missing. What do you think happened there? Those teachers have gone to where they think the pastures are greener.
So you're telling our listeners that Grenada, which has just twice, Antigua, which just has tourism, St. Kitts, Nevis, those countries are Bahamas, those countries are paying teachers more than the salaries in Guyana?
Well, you got it just right. You got it just right. All of those countries, our Guyanese teachers are leaving here to go to those islands where they are receiving far better salaries than what is being offered in Guyana.
Have you made that representation to during the negotiation process to show what our teachers are being paid compared to those countries?
Of course, we did that. We even offered the basket of four in Guyana with basic items to show what a teacher's the salaries that a teacher receives as compared to what the teacher has to spend on a monthly basis, and it outweighs their salaries. But again, I say to you, this government, they pretend all the time that they care, but they just don't care about teachers. We've asked that our teachers be granted $25,000 as a health allowance, which would allow that teacher to, if the teacher gets sick, that the teacher can go and access health care, whether it's a Georgetown hospital and then they have to do an x-ray somewhere else at a private hospital. That was thrown out the table. You know what we were told? We were told by the PS then that they're going to have health outreaches in the communities. Now, when you talk about health outreaches in the communities, here is where I don't want to sound too biased, but at the end of the day, I represent teachers and I want what's best, or we have been seeking there to get what is best for our teachers. Now, when you're going to have a health outreach, it means that the entire community is coming out to that health outreach. More than that, at that health outreach, you can only do the basic at that health outreach. You don't have x-ray machines there or an ultrasound machine to do an ultrasound, and the various tests that you would want to do, you can't do them at a health outreach. So a health outreach is just a sham to say, oh, you're having some experiences, some pain in your head, you have a sprain, you have what? They test your blood pressure, maybe test your blood sugar. That's all that can be done at a community outreach. But we were looking towards having our teachers being able to go to a hospital and they run a couple of tests, whether you test for cholesterol, wherever you go to do the testing there for, and the teachers would be able to get that sum to go out there to do that. That too was thrown off of the table, and it's very disgusting that over the years, I must say, in 2006, it was the first time the GTU signed a multi-year agreement. And so this proposal that we would have presented to the PPP government, it's not a proposal that they are strange, that is a stranger to them. Our first multi-year agreement was signed with the PPP in 2006, where Barra Jagdeo served as the president there. All that we've been doing over the years is changing figures. And in some instances, we add a new clause to our proposal. But it's nothing strange. We have all the oil wealth. We talk about Guyana being the new Dubai of the Caribbean and the country with the fastest growing economy. But here is it. You have your teachers living from paycheck to paycheck. And again, what is even worse is the fact that union heads have decided that they are going to continue to allow their members to go through this kind of struggle.
In 2017, and I stand corrected, the teachers went on strike against the APNU plus AFC government, the Green administration. How long did the strike last, and what percentage did the teachers receive?
In that was 2018 when the teachers took strike action in 2018, and I'm happy that you're bringing this up, because in 2018 it was this same Coretta McDonald leading the bandwagon out there. I traveled from region to region to region, leading the teachers out there in protest against the coalition government. In that period when we protested, it lasted for 9 days. We started during the last week of the August vacation, which was the week we were going into school for preparation for the new school year. And so we went there for the 4 days, 5 days then, and 4 days in the new week when school would have been reopened. By Thursday, we were able to have the government come to the table with us, and we were able to sign off on an agreement that our teachers were very happy with. In that year, our teachers received 12 and 8%, 12, 10, and 8%. And those percentages were given based on your salary scale. So the teachers with the lowest salaries, they received 12%. The teachers with the highest salary received 6%, 6 and 8%. And that was able to bridge the gap between the same TS scale 1 to 3 and the TS scale 4 to 19. Of course, they didn't bring them right, they couldn't reach right up there, but it was able to create a little more less space between that gap that we used to have. But in 2018, the very Barrett Jagview championed our cause then. Coretta McDonald was his champion girl in 2018. But in 2024, Coretta McDonald is the worst thing in his eyes, and that's okay. But I'm saying that to say Barrett Jagview doesn't stand on any principle. Whatever happens now, he speaks about that. Something else happened tomorrow, he speaks about that. He doesn't stand on principle. And the trade union principles talk about collective bargaining, we talk about fairness, we talk about equal pay. That's what we talk about in the trade union movement. And I will continue to voice my displeasure, regardless of which government is in power. I will continue to voice my displeasure as long as you come within the way of teachers, or let me say workers in general. When injustice is being meted out to workers in general, I will speak out about it, regardless of which government is in power.
But when you spoke out, as you said, it led the teachers in 2018, were you reprimanded by anyone from the PNC government?
Well, you know what? It's strange that there might have been little chats in corners, but you never had this kind of man. Look, if Barrett Jagview could have taken off my clothes, he would have done that. You never had that coming from the PNC or from the coalition. You never had that coming from them. And mind you, Congress Place, I visited there on several occasions. I have been a member of the PNC for as long as I can remember, but you never had that coming out from them. You never heard, oh, Coretta McDonald is this and Coretta McDonald is that, and Coretta McDonald shouldn't be there and she should be so, and Coretta McDonald is taking orders. You didn't hear Coretta McDonald taking orders from Freedom House? But Barrett Jagview is now saying Coretta McDonald is taking instructions from Congress Place. Well, I want the general public to come to their own conclusions and to decide where I was taking my instructions from in 2018 when we took industrial action. It had to have been from somewhere. You decide. If I'm taking it from Congress Place in 2024, you decide where I was taking the instructions from in 2018. And this is just to say how you can't trust anything that comes from the mouth of Barrett Jagview and his clique.
Now, the teachers were on strike for 75 days, and the government said they were going to deduct that money from the pay and also not deduct money to go to the union. I think Justice Kissoon ruled against that. Did the teachers lost any pay from the 75-day strike?
Well, that matter is now before the appeals court. Well, I heard the Attorney General then on that day, he said they're going to appeal that decision. I'm not sure where that is, but as far as I know, up to the time that we are speaking here, the government, they have not reinstated the deduction of the dues. Teachers have not lost pay, let me say that, as of now. But we don't know where that matter will go in terms of the appeal that they did indicate they were going to file. But what I want to say is that while we were sitting at that table, and we were talking there, and you heard good faith, and you know, GTU, we were talking here in good faith and good faith. There was no good faith coming from the side of the Ministry of Education and by extension the government. No good faith whatsoever. And I'm saying here that the government, again, the government has been very brutal and heartless towards our teachers. No good faith. And in the minds of Barrett Jagview and Ashni Singh and maybe Priya Manikchan and the whole crew, Their intention is to cripple the GTU. As long as you go out there to stop deducting the Jews, that we've always had this agreement on, whether it was a word of mouth agreement or a written document, that is their intention, to cripple the GTU. And by in some way or the other, Mark Light and a few others, they've allowed part of this to start happening. The government has never one day decided that, look, since we're going through this proposal and we can't give the teachers this and we can't give them that and we can't give them the other, let's reinstate the deduction of the Jews. They've never one day decided to do that.
But did Justice Kissoon rule in favor of that?
Of course he did. And so here it is. You're seeing Barajagio, he likes to talk about what is convenient for him. But in terms of upholding the law, that is nowhere close to him. Nowhere, absolutely nowhere close to him. As a matter of fact, I'm sure you heard the names and all kinds of things that was said about that judge. But the very judge had ruled a couple of years ago against the trade union movement when there was the decision to be made with regards to which union is supposed to be, which umbrella body is supposed to be the recognized one. The same Judge Kissoon ruled that FITAG is the union with the most members, and so they should be the recognized body. And it was, Barajaglia was happy then. But this time around, when Judge Kissoon ruled, it was not in their favor, and so they didn't like this. And that's the modus operandi of the PPP. As long as it's not in their cup, then they don't want it. And anybody who decides to step outside of that, then they go to the length to victimize you. And I'm saying this because many of our teachers have been victimized from February of this year to now. They're still being victimized. We have our teachers on the Essequibo coast who came out there in their numbers. Many of them are being victimized as we speak. Many of our teachers in Linden, many of our teachers in Region 6, in Georgetown and Region 4, they have been victimized. Oh, Region 3, let me not forget them. The teachers in Region 3 have been victimized by this government because they took a stand for their rights.
When you say victimized, what it means?
All right. Teacher in on the Essequibo coast. One teacher in particular who has a flourishing business there, and he had contracts with many government agencies there. They have terminated those contracts. They went to his school and tried to find any little thing that they could have found there to have him disciplined. But you know what? The teachers there continue to work beyond all that is happening. And they ensure that at all times, their records are up to par. They're at school early. They are teaching when they go to schools. We have teachers whose salaries were put on hold for absolutely nothing. And then you heard, oh, they mixed up the teacher's name with some other teacher's name. Two teachers are having the same first name, not the same surname, the same first name, and you mixing the teachers up. You claim, quote unquote, that the teacher was mixed up. So that teacher's salary was on hold. Teacher in Linden's salary on hold for little things. And then you have to wait for an extra month, and there's a whole lot to run around and come around. And that's the kind of victimization that our teachers are going through. When their salaries are not being placed on hold, you have officers in their schools when they're supposed to be at other schools trying to create and resolve issues in other schools. They're finding themselves in schools of teachers who were very prominent during the strike action. And that's the kind of victimization we talk about.
Now, you're saying that Justice Kissoon ruled that the union, the government should not refuse to deduct the union dues from teachers' pay. Did the union appeal that case?
Well, there was nothing for the union to appeal except for the union to file contempt of court action.
And the union did that?
Well, the union has done that. Yes, the union has done that. We have sent those out to all of the Rexos across this country. We're still waiting for that to come up.
Okay. Now, what is the morale of the teachers now since this contract has been signed? Do you know?
Well, I can tell you, I'm sorry that I can't share my screen with you, but you would have seen the comments coming from teachers all across this country. Um, I'm not sure if you're a social media person, but if you're a social media person, then you would have seen teachers putting out there a picture of Minister Manik Chand and the president and all the comments that they have coming on it. And so teachers are quite upset with what has happened. And I can tell you, teachers are ready to take whatever action their branch, whatever action the branch is going to propose, and to direct their general counsel rep to make those kinds of man to, well, not make the kind of mandate, but to stand on those kinds of grounds.
Now, but the teachers are not, they're teaching as normal. They're not
Well,
taking this out on the students.
Well, yes, teachers are teaching as normal, but of course, um, many of our teachers have decided that they will work to rule, and work to rule means you get into work when it's 8:45. You get in there for 8:45, and at 3:15 you're ready to go because your services, your contributions are not valued, and so you're not prepared to give too much more. I mean, teachers, it's not what teachers want to do, but because of the frustration, teachers are forced to adopt so many other measures that they would not normally adopt.
There's been a survey done, I think it was about 2 or 3 years ago, which shows that almost 38% of teachers have a second job.
Well, you know why that is happening. And I don't have to go into that again to tell you. Teachers are security guards at nights. Teachers are working in bars. Teachers are working at supermarkets. And that should say to you that the salaries that they're earning as a professional cannot suffice. While I hear, the talk that, well, people in the US, they have 2 and 3 jobs. Yes, the people in the US, they have 2 and 3 jobs. But you know what? They get job satisfaction. They get job satisfaction, and that's a choice that they would have made. But here in Guyana, teachers don't have a choice. It's what you're compelled to do because you have to make ends meet. Many of our teachers in this country are single parents. Single parent. Many of those single parents are females, and they have to make ends meet. They have to look after their children because they don't want their children to go out there and ask anybody else. So they do whatever is necessary to ensure that their children are taken care of. Teachers are taxi drivers. On weekends, you see them working taxis full time. In the afternoons, you see them working taxis. On the weekends, you see teachers are doing weeding jobs around their communities. Teachers are doing painting jobs. Teachers are involved in everything that you could think about. Teachers are involved in. As a matter of fact, I'm sorry that I have to say this here, but just about 2 days ago, a teacher was caught with marijuana. And that is saying, and it's not the first time this is happening. And so that is saying to you that desperation is causing teachers to do all sorts of things because they have to survive. And this proposal that was submitted to this government, this was not a proposal to ensure lavish lifestyles for teachers. This was a proposal to ensure that teachers are able to live a life of comfort, one that they don't have to duck and hide and seek when courts start calling them or when the landlord come, but one that would entail teachers being able to pay their rent on time, teachers being able to pay their courts bill on time, teachers being able to offer their family or their families a better life. And it's merely one of survival. And it is one of the reasons why we cannot continue to retain ma- males in the teaching profession, lots of males in the teaching profession, because their salary simply cannot maintain them and a family. And that is why, we have so many ills in our society, because what do our children see? Our children, they see every day, they see mommy, they see auntie, they see grandmother, they see cousin who's a female, some other female, and then they go into the school environment, and who they see there? Females again. And so you don't have the kind of male figure to be there to give them the kind of life and the kind of guidance that they need. Mind you, I'm not saying that as women we can't do that, but in any home, in any society, males must be there to play the kind of roles that we expect them to play. But in the teaching profession, too many males can't remain there because their salaries is just not enough for them to maintain their families. But I want to thank the few that we have in the system who have remained here, because in some instances it's because they can't do anything else, and in other instances they have other side jobs to support what they're doing, to supplement their salaries as a teacher.
Unlike professors like myself, you don't have to prepare any work study, but teachers do. So if these teachers are doing 2 jobs and 3 jobs and so forth, when would they find the time to prepare work study? The principals don't know, or the administrators don't, headmasters and administrators don't hold them accountable. They have to present work studies to their seniors.
Well, you know what? The teachers are multi talented, and teachers find different ways and means of being able to do what they have to do. So if you were to be writing notes of lessons every day, teachers decide, look, I'm going to use one day and I'm going to write my notes of lessons for the entire week. So come Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, I don't have to do that. They make their teaching aids. And because we have technology at our hand reach now, it's even more helpful to teachers, where they can go online, they can go on YouTube, they can pull stuff down, modify that, and have it to use in their classrooms.
Now, the question of what the future holds for the union vis-a-vis the contract and by extension the government or the Ministry of Education.
Well, like I said, this lopsided contract will have lots and lots of consequences. Where does this leave the union? Again, the union has been in existence for over 153 years, and the union will continue to stand there, regardless of a few who would have decided that they want to go in another direction. Teachers are resilient. They're a resilient group of people, and teachers are going to regroup, and in regrouping they will make decisions that will benefit them. Where does this leave us with the government? Of course, this entire arrangement has left a bitter taste in the mouth of the teachers, and teachers are not going to forgive this government for what they have done to them. 75 days teachers were in the sun standing. Private sector groupings would have passed by and drop off water and drop some snacks and some rice and some sugar and something for teachers to be able to survive on the streets while they were out there in the scorching sun. Teachers are not going to forgive this government for that, because we are here where we are now exposed to lots and lots of resources. And just the same way we can find the cash grant to give to this grouping or cash grant to give to that grouping, if you were interested in the welfare of teachers, then this government would have sought out ways and means of finding other avenues to help to balance the hardship that teachers are enduring every single day. And so teachers will decide whether they're going to mark a register, or whether they're going to put a tick, or they're going to put an X. Teachers will decide that. But I want to say to you that the union is as strong as its weakest link, and the teachers are even more resilient at this time.
Are there plans for any future strike, or the contract prohibits that?
Well, with this contract, there's no contract that cannot be reversed. And so this contract, as it is right now, it does not prevent anything from happening. It probably is promoting some things to happen, but this here, it can be changed.
Let me ask you this question, and it's for our listeners too. Is it the first time a contract is being signed without the General Secretary's signature?
Very first time, very first time, which has opened the eyes of many teachers and many non-teachers. It's the very first time we have seen, or we are seeing, a contract being signed without the name of the General Secretary being inked on that, or even printed on the document.
Now, President Ali, and I hope I'm quoting him right, he said that by 2027, Guyanese teachers will catch up with those in the Caribbean and even receiving higher salaries, more than some of the CARICOM states. What do you think of that?
President Ali has said so many things, and I've not seen them materialize. And I want to say for your listeners, a promise is a comfort to a fool. President Ali said on one occasion 2027, and then he went further on to say 2030. I am not sure that, and if he has, I'll probably want to have a link to that lifeline that he has. I'm not aware that President Ali has the link to life. And as I'm speaking here with you, over the last week, 2 teachers have died, and they have died without receiving their benefits. So when you tell me about 2027, teachers are going to die before receiving whatever it is that you have for them. Give my flowers to me now. Don't tell me about tomorrow, because you have no control over tomorrow. And it's not a case where a plan cannot be devised. A plan can be devised, just the same way you made all of those offers to the joint services, and you made all the offers to the nurses, and you're giving to the fisher folk, and you're giving to the sugarcane workers, and you're giving to everybody else. Some plan should be devised for teachers. Why you want to tell me I must wait for 2027? So if you're telling me that in 2027 you're going to do this, then I should be asking the teachers to relax until 2027. Let's continue working at the end of 2026, and then we move into 2027. You see, when you make these kinds of loose statements, it can be interpreted differently, and persons can decide to act based on what is said. But again, President Ali says whatever comes to his head sometimes, and he doesn't mean what he's saying on many occasions. We talk about, you hear the big talk about one Guyana, but where is the one Guyana when it comes to teachers? Where is that one Guyana? You don't see the one Guyana when it comes to teachers. And so it leaves one to ask the question, what is the unforgivable sin that teachers would have committed that is causing this government to treat teachers the way they are treating teachers? But we recognize that education is not a priority for this government. If you check over the years, you will see that education is not priority for this government. If I were to go a little step further, the Madia inferno that we had there, it should never have happened. And that in itself is telling you how important lives are to this government, how important persons are. You know, persons are important when it's time to vote. You see them there readily. But on a regular, the lives of citizens in this country, it's not important to this government. 20 innocent lives went down the drain. You know what? All we needed to do was to get a hammer and wrench those screws off and take off those bars that they have on those windows. We would have been able to save 20 lives. So it's not important. Just the first week of, as a matter of fact, before school reopened, we had 8 weeks of vacation for the children. But yet, 23 schools could not have been reopened come September 2nd. 23 schools. And these schools were not, the issues did not appear there overnight. We saw on the Monday, the reopening of schools. Several schools had to be closed. On the Tuesday, schools had to be closed. On Wednesday, we had a fire at West Rumvelt Primary School. You know, we have schools where toilets are not working, and we just reopened school. Toilets can't be flushed. Toilets are backing up. North Rumvelt Multilateral, that what 390 million, I think, was spent to rebuild that school that was burnt by fire, whether it was set there on purpose, and that school had to be closed. Cracks in the walls, no space for teachers' staff room. And you talk about One Guyana. You know, you talk about One Guyana, but you don't see the One Guyana, except for in certain places you see the One Guyana being manifested. And so when I hear persons repeat President Ali say this and that, I don't take it serious, because what he seems to be giving there is a comfort and a promise. And I've learned a long time that a promise is a comfort of fool. It's not what you say, but it's what you do.
One of our listeners, and I think she's a teacher, said that you're a very powerful speaker. And I must ask you the question. The next time election comes around, which she said is about 2 years from now, would you seek the presidency of the GTU?
Well, let me say to you, I don't have to be the president of the GTU to lead. I don't have to be general secretary to lead. I have a passion for what I do. Don't forget, I'm a teacher. So outside of my parliamentary appointment, which can be withdrawn tomorrow, what remains? Coretta McDonald, the teacher. And so when I speak out there, I don't speak just like that from the top of my head. I speak based on my experience as a teacher, as a young teacher in the system. You know, I've had my own challenges. And so I understand what teachers go through when you enter a classroom, and the classroom, you have broken furniture in that classroom, and you have to be propping up furniture. I know what it feels like when you turn up in school and there is no water in school. You don't have electricity in school. I know what it feels like. I know what it feels like when you have children sitting there in a crowded classroom, 3 in a bench. You know, I know that. I understand that. I've been through that. I know what it feels like when you have to sit there and teach children, 35 in a class, 15 are way above, 20 or 10 are down here, and the rest of them way past the flooring. But you have to teach all of them because you have a syllabus to work with. You have a scheme of work to work with, and you have to teach all of them. And when you take the time off to say, look, I'm not going to do that. I am going to work with these children at their own pace. I'm going to stream them. You were being told you shouldn't stream children, because when you stream children, you make them feel less of a person. But you know what? The people who make those policies, they don't sit in the classrooms. They don't have to write on the chalkboard with chalk, dusty chalk. And then you have to, after you're finished writing there, you have to wait for the children to write. Sometimes they take a whole day. And then you have to erase, and you have to put on the chalkboard again. I know what it feels like. So when I speak all the time, I speak from a point where I've been through that and still going through it, because when I visit schools in Georgetown, you visit schools on the East Coast, you visit schools in the hinterland, and you see what our teachers there are faced with, then you have no other choice but to be passionate about what you do. And that's me. And so, like I said, maybe I'll give some consideration for that, but I don't have to be the president to speak for teachers.
Another of our listeners asked me this question. This is a very pointed question. should have to go ahead and win the next election, and you become a minister in the government, does the GTU constitution allows you to retain the general secretary position and be a minister?
Well, let me say to you, the GTU's constitution will allow me to be an associate member. And as an associate member, I cannot hold office, but I can partake and participate in activities that GTU would have. And so you would have what? GTU would normally have a gala for World Teachers Day. We have an award ceremony. We have other fundraising activities. We have PD sessions for our teachers. So I can be part of those, but not to hold office as a central officer. And we have many of our teachers who've moved on to in the wider education sector, where they're education officers, and they're still members of the Ghana Teachers Union, but they can't hold office. They're, like I said, associate members.
Okay, I'm getting these requests now. Another listener asked me to ask you this question again. What would happen in the next 2.5 to 3 years when a new contract comes around? What proposals would the union put forth?
Well, you see, this proposal that we submitted here, it was what we got from our membership. Of course, we guided them, and some teachers said they wanted 50%. The government said when Barrett Jagdeo was opposition leader, he said 50%. So we want 50%. Some said 10, some said 20, some said 35, some and you had to strike a balance. So in preparing another proposal, it would come from what our membership is saying to us, and then we'll strike a balance. In the case of the duty-free concessions, where we asked there for 300 duty-free, it was because we had to shelve the 2019-2023 proposal. So we decided to ask for 300 in the 2024-2026 document, 300 per year. Now, the 300 per year would have been able to give us the kind of steady balance, because many of our teachers who are eligible for duty-free concessions, they can't receive those conditions because because there are conditions that you have to abide by. And in each region, as a matter of fact, for each category, like I've listed before, there's 25. Now we have an added 50 given to us. We have to divide that 50 into four groups. So and when you divide that into 4 groups, you still have to look at each educational district, which equals 11. So it is further broken down that each education district is entitled to so many heads, so many deputies, so many SMs, so many HODs, and that creates the backlog all the time. And we were hoping that with the 300, we would have been able to clear some of that backlog. What we did during the 2016 to 2018 period is that we did write to the Minister of State then, and we requested that an amnesty be given to teachers, so that all of those teachers who would have served this country for 35 years, 34 years, 31 years, 33 years, 29, 27 years, and they could not access the duty-free concession, that consideration be given to them. And so in that 1 year, in 2016, we were given an amnesty where 300 additional teachers were able to receive duty-free concessions. That is the kind of talks and bargaining that we were hoping we would get from this Ministry of Education, and that kind of consideration would have been given to teachers. It is very embarrassing sometimes where teachers teach all their lives. They teach all their lives. You teach a young boy now, and then he moves off to secondary school. And after he's finished with secondary school, he goes and he enlists himself in the Guyana Defense Force, in the cadet officers program. And the next thing you know, this young man is driving a car, and the teacher can't even buy your teacher can't even buy a bicycle. And those are the kinds of things that we look at in terms of building teachers' morale. But again, this government, they don't see that as being important. When we look at what is happening in our education sector, every day you see confusion. Every day there's something happening. We've seen our teachers graduating from the Cyril Potter College of Education, and there have been cries all around that oh, we want 1,700. We want to have 2,300 being graduated. But when you look at the product that is being put out there, it's far from what you expect. And we're saying to this Ministry of Education, we're saying to all the officers there in the senior bracket, we're not talking here quantity, we're talking quality. And so if we were to have 9 teachers graduating, then there must be 9 of the best teachers graduated. You don't put out there 1,700 and then half of that number can't do what they're supposed to do. If they can't man the classroom, they can't deliver the way you expect them to deliver. And in many instances, it's no fault of the teacher who would have been trained. And sometimes it's not the fault of the lecturers, but it's what is being offered to them in terms of remuneration. Let me share with you. It's $1,000, $1,200 per hour to lecture at the Cyril Potter College of Education. Now, Dr. Rose, I'm sure you wouldn't accept that. And if you're paying $1,000, then you get $1,000 worth work. And so if we don't look at reviewing and revising the system that we have, then we all know what is going to happen. And it has started happening.
Now, I want to thank all our listeners for sending me questions. You all send me over 50 questions, but I can't ask all of them. So please bear with me. I'm going to ask one final question.
Well,
I normally assess the questions.
Dr. Rose, let me just cut you there. What you could probably do is maybe you can WhatsApp me those questions and I can send the responses to you so you share them with your viewers.
Okay, that's a good idea. But I want them to know that I appreciate them listening and sending me questions. That's okay, but I cannot ask all the questions.
I know.
Just bear with me. Now, the final question I'm going to ask you from one of our listeners is this. The person asking me if you're an executive member of the PNC.
Well, of course, yes. I sit on the executive of the PNC.
And the next question.
That is widely known. I think
the next question is, are you going to campaign in next year's election?
Well,
that's the final question I'm asking.
I'm going to answer the question like this. At the last PPPC's Congress, the permanent secretary of the Ministry of Education, she was there decked out in her red shirt. And I say no more.
No, but are you going to campaign?
I just said to you that would not be anything strange if I go out there to campaign, because we've seen persons who were permanent secretaries were out there campaigning for the PPPC and they're now ministers and so on. So as a teacher, there is nothing holding me back. And like I said earlier, the Constitution of Guyana gives me the right to belong to any grouping, any political party, any church, anywhere. The Constitution provides that kind of protection for me. But the thing is, when you get to another level within the public sector, this is a teaching sector, if you're at another level within the public sector, then there's a certain decorum that is expected from you. But like everything else, we've become a very lawless country where we do anything. Anything happens in Guyana. We had, we're getting off of what we're supposed to be talking about, but we just saw a tunnel with a whole lot of cocaine. There's an airstrip there. Nobody has seen, nobody knows anything. We got a whole lot of accusations being made at senior police officers, senior education officers. Just the other day, there was some literacy money that can't be accounted for and all kinds of craziness. So We have become such a lawless country that anything happens in this country, and maybe the signing of this agreement, this agreement was probably as a result of a lawless action.
You're saying it, not me. Now, you mentioned some things that come before for the signing of the contract that you don't know why it was signed and you created a storm. And you mentioned it's called doggery, payoff, and what have you. Whom are you really talking about concerning this
Well, well,
payoff?
well,
Is, is
I
Mark right?
let me say to you, Mark Light is the president of the Guyana Teachers Union. I can tell you on that day, there was lots and lots of protests from the officers of the Guyana Teachers Union saying, we shouldn't be signing this agreement. Let's go to the union. Let's ask the ministry for an hour or 2 hours or a day, and let's return. Let's not sign this agreement today. And Mark Light decided he's the president, and so he's signing that agreement. So if the accusations that are being leveled about a brown paper bag, a piece of land, a something, then I didn't sign that agreement. So the accusations can't be leveled at me.
Now, if you're telling our listeners and the world that the president could do what he wants in signing a contract, then don't you think the Constitution should be amended to say that these are the 3 people or 4 people should sign a contract? Short of this, the contract is not valid. Do you think you should amend the Constitution to state that?
Well, the Constitution will have to be amended to say quite a lot of things, not only that. But what I want persons to understand is that Mark Light went there and he summoned a General Council meeting one Friday morning. That Friday morning, Mark Light was fully well aware that there was Parliament on that day, so I could not have attended that General Council. Further to that, the Constitution speaks to 7 days notice for a General Council meeting. If it has to be a special General Council meeting, then there must be 3 days notice. Along with that notice, an agenda must follow. So you see, I'm highlighting quite a lot of the breaches that occurred. On that morning of the General Council, when that notice was placed in the group there, in that WhatsApp group, it went there just about 3 hours before the meeting, the time allotted slated for that meeting. In that very group, many of the General Council reps indicated that they could not have been available for that meeting because they had prior arrangements. When you look at that meeting, there were at least 6 of the officers who were not present at that meeting. So if you were to follow the trend, then you would see that this meeting was planned deliberately to be able to get a certain kind of response from the General Council reps who were present. More than that, the General Council were there set to believing that the team, the negotiating team, the GTU's negotiating team, they were tired at some point because they recognized that the government wasn't willing to budge. And so they were looking at their safety, and persons have to drive from Region 6, and you have to drive from here and drive from there. But during the strike action, you weren't hearing these kinds of talks. You weren't hearing about your security, even though our security was threatened. You weren't hearing that. You weren't hearing that we should not have gone on for 75 days. But when you would have reached the point where you're almost getting to the tape, you're now hearing that you must accept 10% because the 10% is all that they will have to give you. And if you look at non-salaries benefits, you will benefit from the non-salaries benefits. But I want to ask, let me ask some general questions in my closing. How many teachers will benefit from the duty-free concessions? I said it before, 150 teachers. And we have 14,746 teachers. How many teachers will benefit from the allowances for the upgrading qualifications? Not all our teachers. All of our teachers have not completed the education management program because it's not made available to all teachers. It's made available to a certain grouping of teachers. How many teachers are going to benefit from the special needs allowance? Not many teachers. And so again, for every single benefit that is given, it's only a few teachers who are going to be benefiting from them. in terms of the master's degree, in terms of the doctoral degree, how many teachers will benefit from that? And so when you, this proposal that we set here, it was designed to benefit the majority of our teachers, especially in the region of the salary increases, clothing allowance, the risk allowance, the allowance to put mobile data on your phone. That was designed specifically so that all teachers across the board would be able to benefit. And the other areas, when we talk about the duty-free concessions and the allowances for additional qualification and those for the the scholarship and so on, where just a few teachers are going to benefit. Like everything else, we cannot have all of our members benefiting from those areas, but the majority of the other benefits that we sought to set out there, we catered there for the majority of our teachers to benefit. But when you sign on to an agreement where only a few of your members are going to benefit, that has got to be a lopsided agreement. And somebody was not thinking right when they decided. Mark Light wasn't thinking right when he decided to put his pen to that paper. To sell his teachers out. Let me put it just like that. To sell the teachers out. They stood with you for 75 days and you took one, well, not even a day. You took maybe a couple of minutes to throw them under the bus. Without even thinking a couple of things. Let me say this one. If that appeal were to go through, then again, your members will suffer. If the judge decides that their salaries must be cut, your teachers will suffer again. You did not think about the continued existence of the Guyana Teachers Union, because if teachers' salaries are going to be cut, then you know teachers are going to be upset with you. They will not decide to pay their dues. Thirdly, you did not even think about the government not reinstating the dues that was so ordered by the judge. You did not even think about the staff that we have at GTU. We have 9 staff members who are currently actively being paid. We have about 12 pensioners who depend on their pensions to survive. Nobody, Mark Light didn't think about that. And so again, let me say, those pensioners are going to be left in the wilderness. The 9 staff members who we have there, that 9 families are going to be going on the breadline. And then you have an entire union that we will have to close the doors for the 2 buildings that we have, the one in New Amsterdam and the one in Georgetown. Those doors are going to be closed because you will not have the kind of finances to sustain the payment of your electricity bill, your internet bill, weeding the yard, paying the water bill. You're not going to have monies to do that. And so Mark Light did not think about all of those things. What Mark Light did was selfish in terms of signing that agreement.
We have come to the end of the program. On a scale of 1 to 10, 10 being the highest, what is the relationship between the union and the ministry now?
Well, what is the relationship between the union and the ministry?
On a scale of 1 to 10.
On a scale of 1 to 10, the relationship between the Ministry of Education and the union is somewhere about 4.
Okay. Your closing remarks as we come to the end of the program.
Well, I want to close by saying, as leaders, we have to be very tactical, and we have to be reminded of the fact that we are not there as lords and gods. We are there as servants, and that at every step of the way, if we are to make decisions, then those decisions must be made based on consultation. And I'm not saying consultation here, talking to 3 or 4 persons. It must be consultation with your wider membership. Just like in our homes, we don't just jump up and make decisions to benefit or not to benefit the people in our homes. When we are going to make especially major decisions, we consult with our family members. And so as leaders, you're expected to do the same thing. But I want to reassure our listeners that our teachers are a resilient group of people, and that our teachers will rise again. Their morale will be beefed up again, and our teachers will continue to stand as professionals, and they will continue to contribute to this society, because in terms of them contributing to this society, it will make our children of tomorrow the leaders that we want them to be. And they are going to be better leaders because our teachers are here and they have learned from the experience of failed leadership. And so they will teach the children or their charges to become better leaders, leaders who are selfless, leaders who are principled.
Thank you very much, Ms. McDonald. I
You're
want
so welcome.
all our listeners to know that I'm going to promote my book again. It's called A Race to the Finish Line: The Election of Barack Hussein Obama II as the first Black president of the United States. It's here. Can be had at many bookstores and at least Amazon. So you can order copies, just about $39.95 paperback. But hardcover will come out sometime in October, and that will be over $200. So you should place an order now to get a copy as soon as possible. I want to thank Mr. Noir Singh for making this program available, Mr. Devin Bissoon and Mr. Ryan Gobin, our technical directors as well. Without them, this program will not be made possible. And to our listeners, a special thanks to all of you, and to our sponsors as well, a special thanks to you as well. Thank you, everyone, and have a pleasant rest of the evening. Good night.
Good night to you too. Good night to your listeners.
Thank you very much, Ms. Bye.